Welcome to Sacred Conversation, a space where we explore the interaction of faith, history, and human experience. Today we have a special privilege. We are hosting Margaret Roche. I hope I have pronounced your name very well. And Margaret Roche is an author, co-author of the book Cardinal Otunga, A Gift of Grace. And this book is published by Paulines Publications Africa. I am your host, Sister Agatha Chipulu of the Daughters of St. Paul. Thank you, Margaret, for coming and for accepting to feature in this episode of Sacred
My pleasure.
Before we go any further, I wish you to introduce yourself. Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Okay, so as you said, my name is Margaret Roche. I came to Kenya in the late 60s and have taught since then in various schools, worked in Strathmore University, so I'm an educator. Basically, I'm an educator, and over the years I've had many interactions with different people and different personalities, but I think I'd say that the most interesting and impressive time was when we wrote the book. When we interviewed the servant of God, Cardinal Otunga. That was quite fascinating.
Okay, so how did it come about to start writing this book? What was the inspiration? How did it just start?
Well, first of all, Margaret Ogola. I think it began with my friendship to some extent with the late Dr. Margaret Ogola, who, apart from being a really effective medical person, was an author and a very, very successful author. And that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect is that being an educator, having taught at all the levels of basic and higher education, then I'm sort of very conscious of the role of elders, let us say, of people who are older, the role they have, the impact they have on younger people, and the impact their lives have on younger people. So I had met Cardinal Otunga a number of times in Kianda when I was the principal there. Particularly in Kianda, I had a number of interactions with him. And I think that there was something very striking about him in his intelligence, simplicity, faithfulness to his role. There are many things I could say, but there was something particularly interesting in his role as an icon for younger people.
Okay.
So I discussed it with Margaret Ogola, and I think she had already, because she felt the same thing. People had a tremendous respect for him, but really looked up to him. So she had already approached him, I think, with Dr. Cura.
Okay.
But he wasn't too keen on the idea. So that's sort of a bit of the background.
Okay. And how did you manage to convince him to have this written down?
I'd say it was Margaret. So Margaret and I went to meet him. We went to the Cardinal's residence and asked him. We asked him, we sort of put it to him that for posterity, it would be important that we have at least sort of the basic historical truths of his life. He had a very high regard for Margaret Ogola.
Okay.
I think because of her work in FLAC, the Family Life Association of Kenya, and because I would say that because Margaret asked him personally, he agreed to it. He was hesitant. I would say that that's directly linked with what we say about humility, that he did not want the camera focused on him, let us say. But then so he said yes. So at that meeting he said yes, and then from there we began the plan of interviewing him and taping what he said to prepare for the book.
Okay, so that time you were using the tape?
Yes, we were using a cassette.
Okay.
So we would go with a small tape recorder. It's true, it would have been much easier now. But he spoke very clearly. It took us time to ask the right questions. Okay. You know how it is. You have to learn how to ask the right questions. And then at a certain point, because we began by asking a history of his own people, a history of himself. And then I think the tipping point or the turning point was when he left us and he came back with a bone bracelet, armband, which belonged to the royal family of Bahone.
Okay.
That was from then on we got the right questions, and he was very liberal with his memories and with his life story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the title of the book, Cardinal Otunga, A Gift of Grace. Looking at grace, what is the significance of grace in connection with the life of Cardinal Otunga?
We really thought about that title actually because he was a gift to the nation. He was the first Kenyan bishop, and therefore, even if you look at it from a political point of view, the way he steered the church, even in relationship with the state, was going to be very important going ahead for the future of the Catholic Church in Kenya. So gift in that sense. And then, as we went into his life, and his vocation was clearly a gift from God, which he never wavered on, which is really somewhat extraordinary when you really dig deep into his life. So those two ideas of grace, even though gift and grace mean the same thing, but we couldn't find a title that really encompassed these two aspects. I think we thought and we think he was a gift to this nation, and perhaps to the church in Africa, and clearly his vocation was a very powerful gift of grace from God. So that's why we chose that title.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, we thought about it a lot. That's why we chose it.
What was your unique contribution, Margaret Ogola, the late Margaret Ogola's contribution, and your own? How did you come?
How did we?
Yeah.
Well, I think we met with His Eminence perhaps over a period of 3 months, 4 months, and met perhaps once or twice a month maybe, and he was very busy. But then when we did manage to meet him, he would talk. We'd spend a few hours there, and then we taped everything. I would listen to the tapes because Margaret was busier than me. So then what we agreed was we would do different chapters. We agreed on the chapters, and then we agreed on basically every second chapter, let's say Dr. Gola wrote and I wrote the ones in between. But we met a lot in between, and we met physically because there wasn't any online meeting those days. So we spent quite a lot of time meeting in between. We visited Bungoma a couple of times, and Uganda, and Margaret also went to Rome. Digging out what history we could find. So that's how we did it. We split it between us, and then we reviewed each chapter, discussed each chapter. That's how we did it, actually.
So how long did it take for the book to finally come out?
Well, the book was published in 1998, and I spent a year in Ireland in 97, 98. So I would say that maybe 3 years previous to that, because it wasn't so easy to get the historical data. So for instance, we went to Mangu, because he had done high school in Mangu.
Okay.
And then they had, so that was one of the very interesting things. The gentleman there in charge of archives took down a great big folder with records of the students. And what was written about Cardinal Otunga was, this is going to be an outstanding person.
Wow.
But then, for example, in Kaba, or in the seminary he went to in Uganda, all the information was in England. The missionaries had taken it with them to England. There was a fair amount that at that time we were not able to access. But it took us, we spent quite a bit of time in Bungoma meeting relatives of his. In fact, the first photographs, because at the beginning Cardinal Otunga didn't tell us he had he had photographs. He didn't tell us. In fact, yes, it took him time also to agree, even to this thing as photographs, etc. So I think the first photographs we took was in the home of one of his half brothers, Napangi, and it was on the wall. So we took down some of the very first photographs from the wall. We went to the grave of his mother, which was at the end of a sugarcane plantation, and visited her grave there. And also we went to the burial place of Sudi, of his father. So it's not that it took that much time, but of course we were both busy also. So there was quite a bit of work. Margaret went to Rome also, to where he studied in Rome, spent a bit of time there gathering information there.
Okay.
So I'd say maybe 2.5 years, something like that.
Okay.
Then I think Margaret finished the editing while I was in Ireland. She finished the editing and we submitted it to the Paulines, who published it.
All right.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, while you were interviewing the Cardinal, how was his reception, his demeanor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Given who he was, and I mean how famous he was, simplicity is the word. Simplicity in the sense of very relaxed, completely himself. We always had tea. The sisters who were managing his house would prepare tea, but he would pour it. He would not let us pour the tea.
Oh.
He would serve the tea.
Wow.
You just had a very strong sense of being in the presence of a man who was humble, I mean, very aware of his own role and very aware of his power in the sense of who he was and his position in the church. A person who was a person of importance whose I don't know what he was going to say and what he was going to do was going to have an impact, but not conscious of himself in any other sense. There was no ceremony. It was impressive, and I mean there were some things that took us a bit of time to get him to say, because he really did not wish attention to be focused on him, really, you know, in a very striking sense. So he forgot, after a while he sort of forgot about the tape recorder, and so Margaret and I would sort of ask a question, and little by little he got sort of more relaxed into answering things, and then he began to show us. When we came back from Bungoma the first time, then he showed us his albums, that there were albums, very, very, very good photos. But I think one of the photos we took off one of the walls was the baptism of Sudi, which is very dramatic. So, it was a pleasure to sit and listen to him. And once he got talking, he talked quite a lot. But even when we left, he would see us to the door. Even when he wasn't particularly well, he would see us to the door. So, very, very simple in the real sense of the word simple, if you know what I mean. That's how it went. Then we would check things with him, come back and see him, check things with him, let him see what we were writing, let him make any comments on what we were writing. I mean, we really interacted with him, which was a great pleasure.
Wow. That's nice. It was a very unique experience for you.
I can still remember the sense of being in his presence. Yeah, I can still remember that. And afterwards, when he retired and he was in Nyumba, we continued going to see him, and he said mass for us there. It was quite something to be in his presence. That is true. It was a great gift. To do that, yeah.
It was really a gift of grace. So, during your research, during the interviews, the interaction with him, what really struck you as you continued this process of coming up with a book?
You know, as he gradually sort of told the story of his childhood and his father and his mother, his siblings. Going to how Sudi welcomed in the Catholic missionaries, and his father allowing them to go to school. I think that the way he described the gradual realization of the fact that he had a vocation, and that he had a vocation to the priesthood, like a small. How did he put it? It's in the book. I can't remember exactly the words, but a small realization within him that he had a vocation to the priesthood, and that sort of gradually grew over the years, but never left him. That was very impressive, because at his circumcision, Sudi threw his cloak over him. One of the relatives actually told us that, meaning that actually Sudi intended him to be chief. So the pressure from his family and from society on him to be chief when he was an adult was huge.
Yeah.
And even the pressure they placed on him when he came back from the seminary, from Rome, for example, when he was ordained, the pressure was mighty. I mean, Sudi was a powerful man.
Yeah.
Yet he was convinced. So I mean, God was very close, I think. Anyway, so for both Margaret and myself, that the fact that vocation stuck, let's put it like that, that other things didn't dissipate it was very impressive. And then, you know, when he was ordained later on, when he was ordained bishop, he did have some opposition. Life was never all that easy for him. But I mean, that was one of the things that was very impressive. One of the things that I think he got a little bit upset with me about was when we went to meet his sister-in-law, John Harry's widow. She called him Nyoka. So I wondered, how can they call such a man Nyoka? So when we came back to see him, and they explained the reason they called him Nyoka was that his mother was a diviner. So she would have many people in the room divining, whatever divining is, yeah. And he was a small baby, and he could have been trodden on, he could have been stepped on. So a huge snake, a python, would lie over him. And they tried to get rid of that python with burning things, but they didn't. And then as soon as all the crowd left, the python would go. So they called him Nyoka. I didn't believe it. I wouldn't say that I had visualized in myself that I didn't believe it, but he realized when we asked him about this, he realized that I found it difficult to believe. So he went out of the room and he typed that statement, the whole thing about him being protected by the snake, and he signed it and dated it and gave it to me. So that was true. That for me was wow. That was quite something. That was one of the things that was very impressive. Yeah, his protection. You know, that God had already designed who he was going to be, and he was. That protection was. I found a lot of those things. Margaret obviously would be a little bit more familiar with the culture, but I learned a great number of things about the Bajone during that time. It was very impressive.
Okay.
Yeah. I think those were, well, there were many issues. I mean, when we talked to his relatives in Bungoma and the stories about him, and well, there were many very beautiful things. But I think those two things, I think also because I have a kind of a political and historical mentality. So when he was bishop, I'd say his clarity of mind in having a clear separation between church and state. And there I think is one of his greatest gifts to Kenya and maybe to other places in Africa. He was so clear and very interesting because he was a young man. But there was something about his clarity of understanding of him being, okay, when he was cardinal, the deposit of faith, and his clarity in his relationship with politics was for me was very impressive. Having seen different things in other places, I'd say those were, yeah.
Okay, what can you tell the viewer out there? A specific experience that you had, or something that you wish to share to the viewer out there?
So one of the things towards the end, when he was already retired, and he was living in Nyumba ya Wazee, where he was very, very happy, was his awareness of things that might be troubling Margaret and myself. So he would surprise us by asking some very personal question that I wouldn't have known, for example, that he would be aware of, and telling me that he was praying for them and for Margaret. I mean, well, the whole thing was an amazing experience. I mean, the sort of to see live the development of a vocation, but also his sensitivity to people, even like to me or to Margaret, and the things he prayed for, and the way in which some of those things were sorted out is a very sort of personal experience in my relation with him. So, I mean, he loved Kenya. I mean, he had a tremendous sense of nationhood. So I would say to pray to him, to ask for his intercession, because he's for sure he's very close to God. So to ask for his intercession, because he would still. I mean, they tell us that the souls in heaven and in purgatory are very, very close, and I believe. I mean, I pray to him for help. I think maybe that is what I would say.
As we finally come to the end of our discussion, what message of hope can you give to the viewer out there, especially those who are going through a lot and maybe they are giving up?
Well, he had opposition from very early on. I mean, in particular when he made up the decision that he was going to be a priest, and he made that early on. I mean, he had very powerful opposition, but he also had opposition when he was bishop and when he was cardinal, serious opposition. But I suppose it's his sanctity. I suppose it's his sort of closeness to God, conviction of his own vocation and conviction of God's presence that helped him rise above these things, and do so much for the country. I'd say that hope is hope. Well, it's the year of hope. Hope is very necessary, but to hope, I suppose one has to have a sense of self and a sense of God. It's very difficult hope just in yourself when things are so difficult around you, but the hope in God and hope and belief in people. Let's say belief in fellow Kenyans, because he believed in Kenya. He believed in Kenyans. So I need to have thought a bit deeper about that, but I mean, that's what comes to my mind maybe.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for sharing that indispensable and touching experience you had It's a rare opportunity to find such information, to have somebody who has had an experience with the servant of God, Cardinal Otunga, first-hand information. So we are very grateful for having you and for your sharing.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
My pleasure. It's a great opportunity to do this. Actually, thank you very much.
Okay. All right, viewer, we are coming to the end of our program, our discussion, a very touching one. If you want to know more about it, you can get to read this book, Cardinal Otunga, A Gift of Grace. This is a very, very touching, and for somebody who is seeking inspiration, this is a must-read for you. So it is available at all Paulines Books Centers, and you can order for it online at shop.paulinesafrica.org. I was your host, Sister Agatha Zimba of the Daughters of St. Paul.